Hello and welcome to Greater Somerville. I'm Joe Lynch. In our continuing efforts to bring all of the 2011 candidates to you, on today's program is a candidate for Ward 4 Alderman Christine Barber. A native of Rhode Island, she lives in the Winter Hill district of the city, is a graduate of Holy Cross and UMass, and currently works for a national healthcare advocacy group. Endorsed by the Progressive Democrats of Somerville and the Young Democrats of Massachusetts, it is my pleasure to welcome for her first visit to Greater Somerville, Ward 4 candidate Christine Barber. And welcome to you.
Thank you for having me on today. It's great to be here.
You gave Cayenne and I the greatest compliment. You said you've watched a lot of our shows.
I definitely have.
There you go.
They're great. They're very informative, too.
There you go. Well, as you know, we try to keep abreast of what's happening in politics. This is the least favorite time for Cayenne because this year is very busy.
Yes.
We have ward races in Ward 4, ward race in Ward 7, ward race in Ward 3, and alderman at large. Wow. So we've tried to accommodate every candidate.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's good, though. It's good that people are running. I mean, that's a good sign.
Christine, I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
I encourage people, if you've got something to say, you have multiple avenues, and one of the best ways to show people that you can do that is to run for public office. So,
Great.
open seat in Ward 4,
Yes.
right here on Greater Somerville. Months ago, current Alderman Walter Perro announced that he would not be seeking re-election, and that opened up the Ward 4 seat. You decided to run.
I did.
Tell us why.
Okay. So I've lived in Ward 4 for a number of years, and it's a really great community. It's very diverse. There's a lot going on there, but there are a lot of opportunities there that are not being met, and I think we really deserve an alderman who's going to work hard and advocate for the neighborhood and really bring people together, listen to what residents' ideas are for some of those opportunities. There's a lot of great ideas as I'm going around talking to people door to door. People have a lot of great insight about their own community, of course. And I think we really need an alderman who's responsive to those needs and listening to people in the community.
What do you see? You've heard a lot door knocking. You've been campaigning for a while now.
Yes.
What do you see, though, as one of the major reasons why you wanted to jump in? And then we'll get into what the constituents are telling you. So.
There's a number of reasons. So I've been involved with the community level in Ward 4. I previously lived on Marshall Street and was one of the organizers of a neighborhood association we have there.
We love neighborhood associations.
Yeah, they're great, and they're sadly kind of rare. Foss Park has a good one as well in Ward 4.
And Magoon Square Neighborhood
Well,
Association.
of course, Magoon Square, but you're outside the ward. So, at Marshall Street, we pulled together neighbors who, spoke different languages, renters, owners. We worked with the businesses, and it was a great experience. But we did sort of hit a threshold or a wall of what we could do. And even though we were organized, yeah. And it did help in some ways. It helped, definitely bring people together. People knew their neighbors. People were watching out for each other a lot more. But there's only kind of so much that you can do, and at some point you do need local government, to be responsive. I have a professional history of, I was a community organizer many years ago, 15 years ago, and then I got more into policy, and I worked at the State House for a number of years, and I worked on Massachusetts health reform, and I've had a lot of good experience of really digging into legislation, budgets, and using that to advocate for working people, to advocate for people on the ground and constituents.
And being a community organizer is one of the key things that any alderman or elected official has to know how to do.
Right, you have to know how to talk to people, get people in a room,
build
get
consensus.
them interested, have conversations with people so they feel a connection, and so honestly, they feel like their ideas are being heard, that it's useful for them to be there. And people are busy. They don't, want to waste their time. They want to be at a meeting because they're having an impact. So I
hear it. I go to a lot of community meetings, as you know, and I I don't think there's been a community meeting that I've been to in this city over the last 10 years that I haven't heard at least one person say, what a waste of time.
Yeah.
And sometimes, Christine, that happens because those folks are not engaged. They don't speak up. They don't let people know what's on their minds. So going back to you campaigning over the past few months, what are people in Ward 4 saying?
So there's a few issues that are constantly coming up. The number one issue is, the Star Market has been empty
Sure.
on Broadway. For those of you who, so the Broadway corridor through Winter Hill is the main economic, area
Yep.
for Ward 4. The Star Market has now been empty for going on 4 years. People are angry. It's become an eyesore, not being kept up, and it's really harming the other small businesses in the area. There's other empty storefronts. It is an economic downturn, but it's also because we don't have that anchor store, helping the community. So, I hear that over and over.
It is, though, privately owned land.
It is privately
Yeah.
owned land. There are, things that we can do to, we're in a difficult situation right now with there's a lawsuit going on
Sure.
with it and things like that.
We'll set it up just a little bit
Yes.
for the folks at home that a few years ago there was a major initiative by the city to rezone parts of Broadway and for the sake of Ward 4, it was really from McGrath Highway up the backside of Winter Hill,
to
up to
Dartmouth.
about Sycamore Street
I
or
think it's Dartmouth. It's, up to the top of Winter. Well,
to the
close
top,
to the top of Winter.
Walgreens, 350
Yeah.
Food Mart,
Yeah.
that area. And what happened subsequent to Stop and Shop coming in was that kind of pushed the old Star Market out. It's privately held property, the big parking lot that you see there, as well as the Star Market building. And the neighbors in Ward 4 have been trying to push to get something in there. There have been suggestions all over the place. And what happened was an Ocean State Job Lot, which is a company now that we know of over in Medford, Ocean State Job Lot approached the owner of that building about coming in. Neighbors in Ward 4 pushed back and said, that's not the type of business that we envisioned when we rezoned Broadway. So I guess, however the planning board looked at this in the city of Somerville, the planning board said, no, we're not going to allow that reuse of that building. So it's gotten people really divided, though, because on one front, you don't want empty storefronts
Right.
and blight in your neighborhood.
Right.
On another front, you don't want to get this guy locked in for the next 10 years on a lease
Right.
when everything else around him is being redeveloped.
Right. And I think that's something to keep in mind, that the leases for that space are very long. The Rite Aid is in there for, it might be 20 years.
Sure.
These are very long term. This is not something that would turn over. So we have to be very careful. We have to listen to the community about what do we want out of our neighborhood? What kind of jobs do we want? What do we need? What would be something good for the community? So over and over, people overwhelmingly would like a grocery store in that space. And I think that we can work with the owner and try to find something that fits. People also would like to see, there's no place to gather. There's no place for people to see their neighbors and whether it's a coffee shop or something. There's takeout places that are great, but there's no place to kind of spend time and see each other, and to put that in there would be
So
great.
really, what you're hearing is the revitalization of that part of Winter Hill. People want to see some movement happen. You bring an interesting point that folks wanted to see some type of a supermarket come back in there because, quite frankly, we'll never get rid of McGrath Highway, and that's a dangerous thing for folks in Winter Hill to walk to Stop and Shop and then try to come back to their neighborhood. So here's something that I heard the other day. As you know, that Walmart Supermarkets is looking at the old City Circuit site down in Assembly Square.
Yes.
Would the Winter Hill residents or that Ward 4 neighborhood be receptive to the Walmart going into that site?
So of course that hasn't come up officially in that site, so I haven't been asking that question, but I think we would oppose that. That to me is, I think we have to ask, what do we want of our community? Historically, Walmarts have put other local businesses out of business. That's been a huge issue with Walmart, and I think we have to think really hard about what it would mean for our neighborhood. And the other side is also, historically, Walmart has not provided good jobs with benefits.
Okay.
I mean, I think there was just a lawsuit about discriminating against women, but we have to ask, what are these going to be good partners? Are they going to support the community?
Any larger
Yeah.
business that comes in, we as a responsible community, I think, have the right to ask
Yeah.
that. Are you
Yeah.
going to be a good business partner here?
Yeah.
It's funny that you brought it up. Not funny, but it is on the minds of people because we did a special with the mayor a couple of weeks ago, and that very subject came up. About Walmart, their labor practices. How do we bring that? How do we encourage business coming into the city, but making it very clear what type of partners we want?
Right. And what can we ask of them so we can be assured there's good jobs, that they are, contributing to open space, that there's other things that we can kind of get
Sure.
from them. I mean, I don't want to be we don't want to turn the city over to developers or to the big businesses. We want to be
Delicate balance.
Yes, we want to be. The commercial base is important, but we also need to be getting something for it. So
Yeah.
how do we negotiate that?
Yeah, it seems to be, as you know, we did the big debate down at the Somerville Theater last week, this past week, and that very subject came up about reuse of larger sites within the city. So one of the sites that would also be on the radar of the people of Ward 4 would be the Homans building down on Medford Street across from Vinnie's gas station. I always refer to it as Vinnie's gas station.
Not actually in the ward, it's across the street. Right,
Right,
yeah,
right.
But it's the Gilman Square.
It's the Gilman Square T-stop,
Yep.
which is, basically Ward 4 saying,
Yep.
this is what we want.
Exactly.
Talk a little bit about what your position is on that redevelopment there,
On the Homan building.
on the building itself, yeah?
So I've gone to another over the summer, in the past year, I've gone to a lot of community meetings about that space, about kind of envisioning what the community wants out of the design of that T-stop, which I think that's really important. If we want that T-stop to be accessible and to work for people, we need to hear, what people want out of that. So I think, STEP and community corridor planning, and SCC have done a great job of bringing residents together to have those discussions about what our community will look like when the Green Line comes through, and really getting people engaged and part of the design process, which is really critical. I think there's a lot of opportunity for that space. It is obviously right at the station right there. It's also right near the high school.
Sure.
So there's opportunity for things that we could provide greater opportunities for youth perhaps in that space with kids coming through.
And I think we have a lot more flexibility because the city owns that building.
Right. So I think it's great that the city owns it, and the city can head up the planning on what do we want out of that space. I think it would be great if we could. One of the issues with the Green Line coming through is that it's already happening. That prices are. It's getting more expensive in Ward 4. And
Gentrification is already here, and it's here to stay.
Yeah, and Ward 4 has been somewhat more affordable than other parts of the city. And because of that, we have a lot of people who have lived there for a long time. We have more mixed income than other neighborhoods here. So how do we retain that? And I think the Home and Building could be part of that answer, is having affordable housing near transit, would be a great opportunity there. And if we could mix that with, the meetings that I've gone to on the
But let me stop you right there. The irony of having affordable housing or public housing near transit is that in the past we've put our public housing projects next to highways, which is not exactly what folks have envisioned for healthy living for the less affluent.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that the area, 93 cuts right through Ward 4. The air quality is not good. There's higher asthma rates because of that. And, this is one of the reasons why we're all pushing for the Green Line, is to, have healthier communities,
clean transportation,
and have people living closer to clean transportation.
Well, let's go back to the Homans for a minute. Would you advocate tearing that building down and starting anew, or?
I don't think so. I haven't. When I've looked at the plans, so the other night, the DOT had their meeting, and the plans don't the plans for the T don't necessitate tearing it down. As far as I know, they're building kind of next to it. So it seems like, as long as the building, I think, is sound, a good opportunity to, especially since the city owns it, to redo that building and figure out kind of how we could use it the best way we could for the neighborhood.
So speaking of Green Line, I saw you at the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was up there. There was some talk about the eminent domain proceedings. Any eminent domain proceedings in Ward 4 that you know of?
I don't know of them, and I don't actually think there are, because I don't think the Green Line actually cuts through Ward 4, because
You're
it's
right
right on the
edge of 3 and 4.
Yeah. And 1 actually. So I think there aren't issues with that I know of.
Okay.
So that's good.
We've got one of the larger public housing developments in the city down at Mystic. What's happening in Mystic? Are they still thriving, or do we have increased crime? What's happening in the Mystic projects down there?
So I've door knocked the whole district, but I've spent a good amount of time there. It's amazing because there's so many kids and families out all the time. I think it's thriving. I think people seem to be, it is an economic downturn. It's definitely a hard time, but I think it's great that we have housing that people can afford to live in. So I think that it's in a good place. I mean, what I hear over and over from people in the Mystic is because of where it's situated, and because a lot of the people who live there don't have cars, it's incredibly hard to get to work, to get around. You have to cross Mystic Parkway, you have to cross under sometimes 93 to get the bus, and it's just, and when we talk about getting to a grocery store, walking to Stop and Shop from there,
right.
Not geographically far, but it's a very hard walk.
Sure.
If you have kids, if you're pushing a carriage, if you're elderly.
And quite frankly, in my opinion, it's dangerous.
Yeah, it is dangerous.
It is not pedestrian friendly at all.
So I think there is, that's definitely an opportunity for planning, working with the MBTA, and the state owns some of the, the parkway.
The Fellsway.
The Fellsway, so it is a city-state partnership there to figure out how to make that easier for people to get around.
I know you worked at the State House, but good luck with working with the state on that one.
We have a good delegation.
But it's not, remember, Christina, it's not just the delegation.
No,
you have to wade through all the corridors up there.
Is not lost on me. So I worked on a number of issues at the State House, but I worked on the Healthcare Committee for a few years, and I worked on health reform, and at that time it was 2006, so I worked for the Democratic House leader, and but we worked very closely with Governor Romney's staff, and you work through people who have different beliefs than both sides of the aisle, and that's how things get done.
All the healthcare systems, whether it's national, state, or local, municipal, are going through gyrations of change. The mayor recently instituted for city employees and the retirees of the city to go into the GIC.
Yes.
GIC is Government Insurance Cooperative. I always forget that C. Somebody will correct me.
I don't know.
But it's the GIC, which takes them out of the current healthcare system and puts them into this collective bargaining pool. What do you think? Was that a good idea for the mayor to do that, or was it out necessity he had to do it?
I don't think it was a necessity. So I agree. The city has difficult budget issues right now. I think we all know that it's a difficult time for all cities, but Somerville has struggled, and the mayor's done a good job overall in balancing the budget. The issue with the GIC is that for people, for someone like me who's basically healthy and goes to the doctor a few times a year, it's perfectly fine. Where I've read some studies that I'm more concerned about is when people have chronic illnesses, people are elderly, people who need a lot of care and really need coordinated and
many
care.
Visits to the doctors.
Many visits, different specialists working with them, that it can get very expensive.
That cost goes up for each visit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for people who, retirees get this as well. So for especially older people, but anyone who has a chronic illness, I think we really need to look at protecting them so they're not avoiding care and doing these things that we know result in much worse health outcomes.
Sure, because if things get too expensive for the chronically ill or the seniors, they will tend to start cutting back.
Right,
which means
cutting pills in half. And
they'll cut their pills,
Yeah.
they'll avoid going to the doctor, until it's too late, and then the health care cost becomes catastrophic.
Then you're in the hospital and it's much more
That's right.
expensive,
Right.
but also not good for people's health. So I think we have to think about
I
that.
thought it was an interesting thing to ask you about. You were in the healthcare advocacy part of it, but let's go back to some Ward 4 issues.
Yes.
The Ward 4 issue that has just come up, and I haven't had a chance to discuss it amongst a lot of people, which is the redistricting in Massachusetts as a result of population shifts. We're redistricting one of the congressional districts. As a result, some of the Massachusetts State House representative and senatorial districts have been shifted. It looks like Carl Shortino, the state rep who has traditionally represented only a very small piece of Ward 4, is picking up more.
So Rep. Shortino's had two precincts, and I think he's picking up a third. He's picking up 4-3. From what I've read, and I have not. So Rep. Provo has represented one precinct, and we
traditionally she had 4-3, and my understanding is she's now taking over Tim Toomey's down here in the eastern part of the city. So nobody's really losing. It's just a shift of population. Yep.
And well, I think Rep. Provost had been great. She was alderman at large for a long time. She's been a great advocate for the city, and I'm sure she'll continue to do that. We're sad to be losing her, but she has been looking out for Ward 4. So hopefully she'll continue to keep us in mind.
Yep. Let's go right back to the voters, because that's what you're looking for. You're looking for those voters. What else are the voters saying? In general, how is the city doing? Are they satisfied with city services?
Overall, people are. They're happy. They're happy with the city. They do see, as I said, some opportunities or some frustrations in the neighborhood, Broadway corridors. We talked a little about. I think we could do some planning there and really beyond the Star Market, revitalize that area to make it more of a neighborhood
destination.
Yeah, we've done this with Magoon Square of trying to think about. It's not easy, but they just repaved Temple. There's opportunity at the intersection of Temple and Broadway to make that more of a place that people want to.
But I got to tell you, for you and your opponent, Tony Lafuente, that was a major issue, was Temple Street.
Oh my goodness.
Not just for the people of Ward 4, it was across the city. So I hate to say it, but the wind got taken out of both your sails. Now that Temple Street's repaved, so.
Maybe you can't claim that, but I think it's still an opportunity. Now that Temple Street's repaved, which some people thought was never going to happen, what can we do with that area? It kind of opens up possibilities for, that street historically has not had great lighting. It's not someplace, how do we get people walking and out more in that area? And I think, there's a lot we can do there.
Traditionally, there's been a little bit of an uptick in crime down in that Jake Street, Temple Street area. What do you think? You think it's on the upswing, on the downswing? Where is it?
So historically, and they usually say it's because we have Mystic, McGrath, there's ways for people to get in and out of the city in that area, easy access, more so than resident issues. I think it's an issue. I hear about it from people. People are nervous. There have been some rashes of break-ins and cars stolen and things like that. And I think we do need to look at it as a community and say, what could we be doing? What could the city be doing? Work with the police to figure out how to, be more vigilant about things like that.
Sure.
Because it is, Ward 4, that area does have more of that.
And I think it's a little bit of an image problem. If you're trying to get new businesses to come in, that's something that any marketeer will look at. What type of a neighborhood am I going into?
Well, and residents too, when they're looking to come in or
to purchase new homes, right?
Yep, that's something that. I hear from people who have lived there for a long time. They want to people want to feel safe. They
Right.
want to feel like, this is a nice community. We know our neighbors. We feel comfortable walking around.
Sure.
And, yeah.
Sure. There's one parcel. We're going to be wrapping up in a couple of minutes here, but there's one parcel that, again, Christine, I'm fortunate that I see a lot of people across the city, and they ask me certain questions, and if you have candidate X on, ask them. But there's one parcel that in Ward 4, help me, I know it's in Ward 4, is the old Cataldo Funeral Home.
Yeah, it's right near where I live.
What's going to happen with that? That's a huge parcel of land.
It is a huge parcel, and it's right near where I live. I honestly don't
Still
know of
private.
any plans. It's still privately owned, and there have been rumors about what they're doing with it. So there's a few things. I mean, one. So as you know, like a lot of Somerville, but I think Ward 4 has very little open space.
Sure.
There's almost no. We have Foss Park on the edge, which is great. But
And you share that with Ward 1. Ward 4 and
right,
Ward 1 share it.
Right.
Yeah.
But beyond that, there's very little, we have the median strips. We don't have, a lot of open space. And there's a few areas that I think we could kind of work on that. But I think Cataldo does have, a lot of it is not developed, so we could use at least part of that for a park or for use
If we
for
can get
kids.
the private owners to
Exactly,
kind of
so
do
it's
a work.
negotiating.
Yeah.
And then, or the other side of it is, I think for part, again, it's a very big space. So for part of it, we could do development, housing, so maybe commercial on the, mixed use, commercial on the bottom, and then housing, because it's right on Broadway. It could be a good place to develop as well.
Well, let's hope that let's hope that whoever the developer is, because I'm not positive what's going to happen with
Yeah.
it, but people were asking me, let's hope that we try to retain the integrity of Winter Hill instead of tear down of our beautiful old homes and put up brick
Right.
apartment buildings.
Well, that's the whole question, right? We want some development, revitalization, and commercial base to help out the
and
tax
still try to
issues.
respect the neighborhoods that
But
you're in.
community
Yeah.
involvement, having people at the table who care about the neighborhood, who really want to preserve the character, and not letting the developers get away with whatever they want, but getting something from that, whether that's affordable housing or city services.
That's the job of any alderman.
That is.
Ward alderman at large, or mayor, is to protect the people who are living, working, and playing in this city. We've got about 35, 40 seconds left. You want to take a look at the camera and tell the folks at home
Sure.
what Christine's about and where to get in touch with you.
Okay, I'm Christine Barber. I'm running for alderman in Ward 4, which is the neighborhoods of Winter Hill and 10 Hills. I would ask for your vote and to get involved with the campaign. It's a grassroots campaign and very exciting. I want to work with members of the community and advocate for this neighborhood. So my web address is a little confusing. It's Christine Barber 4, like Ward 4, Somerville.com.
There you go.
Thanks.
There you go. I want to thank my guest, candidate for Ward 4 Alderman, Christine Barber. That's it for today. Thank you for watching. As always, Somerville, stay safe and stay informed.